You made it. Welcome back to another For Honor tier list. In this video, we'll go over the strengths and weaknesses of a hero when you regrettably decide to boot up For Honor once again. Most of us play in matchmaking lobbies, whether it be solo or with a friend, where the craziest things can happen and make you feel like you're standing next to a nuclear reactor as you generate tumors or watch players that seem to play like they have them. So I'll be making this tier list for the players that want to be able to deal with the most amount of baloney that this game throws at us. This will help new players and veteran players of all ages. I'll also make a small mention of where I place them in duels since everyone's been asking for that, but I'll mainly be focusing around 4v4 since it is the more popular mode. But before we dive on in, there's a few things I want to talk about. I want to explain my criteria on the tier list and what makes a good hero tick. So if your hero has many of these traits, they are probably going to be considered one of the top tier heroes. 1. Undodgeable attacks, unblockable attacks, dodge bashes, unreactable light attacks, a chase tool for dodge rollers, dodge attacks, enhanced lights, and amazing feats. Another separate list will include heroes with clutch potential, which can change the momentum of a fight tremendously. Some of these may push a hero up a tier simply due to how powerful it is in situations where it matters the most and can make you feel like you're actually a powerhouse. Full blocks, defensive stances, hyper armor, dodge cancel recoveries, deflects, superior blocks, high heavy parry punishes, or certain special traits about a hero. And for perks, I won't be going over it for every specific hero, but the main ones you should always be trying to run are Bastion, Vengeful Barrier, Last Stand, Bulk Up, Endurance, Headhunter, Rapid Refresh, and Remedy. The other perks, in my opinion, are situational and refer to your playstyle. If you have any other important traits that you want to add, let me know down in the comments. Instead of vaguely just stating if a hero is S or D tier, each tier will mean something specific. S tier will most likely mean that you don't need that much of a brain to get value. And of course, I'm not saying it doesn't require skill to use this hero, especially to its full potential, but I am saying you do get value just by existing. And for the D tier heroes, the lower tier heroes, you will need a NASA computer to maintain a positive KD ratio. So let's just dive on in and try to make this as painful as possible because it's going to be a long ass video, I'll tell you what. Alrighty, so let's just start off with what I think is the best hero in the game when it comes to 4v4, and that is my man Jengju. And he's got unblockable chain heavies with tremendous range and can be target swapped so people can't parry them. Unblockable zone is probably his most overpowered move, which makes him incredibly hard to fight in team fights. Chain lights are also incredibly useful. Shin kick for OS pressure alongside his great side winding heavies, which have tremendous tracking. He's got a forward dodge heavy for chase when people try to roll away, and it forces you to stay into the team fight even if you're low. His clutch potentials include Sifu stance, which gives him stamina back and iframes, getting you into your unblockable zone attack. I kid you not, this is his best move in his entire kit. Sure, his unblockable heavy does a ton of damage and his hitbox is ginormous, but it's slower and it's his chain mix-up. This is a neutral zone, it's incredibly fast, it can be target swapped so that most of your enemies will get hit by it during a team fight and won't be able to parry it in most situations. This makes Jengju incredibly unpredictable. Man gets a choke that also wall splats, take away stamina, or hold a revenge, making opponent waste the revenge, which is hilarious. Don't forget about his hyper armor on his neutral heavies. His dodge attacks are also insane that allow you to reposition incredibly quick with ease and iframes. The feats are worth mentioning are pretty much against all odds: Soothing Mist, Fire Flask, and Phalanx. Makes him a unit, makes him a tank. You can do whatever the heck he wants. If your hero has any of these feats, it boosts them up in the tier list. He's honestly got it all. In duels, I'd say he's a solid A tier hero. He's got all the tools available to him in ones that don't make him too powerful in a 1v1 situation. I mean, what more can you really ask for? His heavy unblockables have a soft vein GB, he's got an opener, he's got choke potential, he's got wall punish parry potentials, and all that good stuff. Raider is probably the next best hero on the roster. I would say he's pretty in line with Jengju when it comes to power, but what more can I really say? Unblockable zone, which you can fade like 4 or 5 times, chain zone, hyper armor and his chain heavies, great for target swapping, a fast ass storming tap that's unreactable, soft feint GBs for all of his feints heavies. Raider doesn't really have any weaknesses besides not having a bash, but he doesn't really need that as he has the best chain pressure in the entire game. Stampede charge is also a great ganking tool and overall a really easy hero to use. Dodge attack is fast, it can be variable timed. Feats such as Tireless, Bear Trap, Fire Flask are all of his best feats, but I think his most important trait is his low stamina consumption. He's also an amazing anti-ganker, installer, no question, no doubt in my mind. He's probably the best duelist in the game due to his ability to constantly put pressure on his opponents with unblockables and soft feints. He's S tier for sure, and I really don't have to turn on my brain when I use this hero, I kid you not. It's incredibly easy to do well with this hero, even against all the 4 stacks and all the comp players that I fight with random players on my team. Shinobi is also placed at the very top. because, I mean, frankly, what more can I say? Unblockables, undodgeable, chain heavy finishers, dodge bashes with 2 different timings, fast lights with good range, good zone too, great chase with his forward dodge heavy, chain 50-50 with his somersault kick, tons of clutch potential, including his sickle rain that easily lands free damage. It's just a nightmare to deal with. You get stun locked for 2 seconds and you can keep going with your unblockable mix-up afterwards. His deflect is also guaranteed and also repositions him to continue his chain pressure. He also gets a ton of iframes on his backflip, which allow him to avoid tons and tons of damage, making it incredibly hard to punish unless you make a huge raid and GB him. Deflects are also super strong and allow you to get your chain mix-up as well as your parry punishes. Worthy feats include Bounty Hunter, Regenerative Stamina, and health feats, Nail Bomb and Smoke Bomb, and stars are superb in every aspect. Shinobi is one of the best gankers in the entire game. Frankly, he's a hero that does every single thing. He anti-ganks, he stalls, he ganks, and he is a team fighter. Thanks Ubisoft. I'd say Shinobi is a decent anti-ganker, but he's an even better staller. In duels, I'd probably rank him S tier as well, since he has all the tools necessary to deal with pretty much every single situation. He can outspace you, and it kind of feels like he plays his own game and you're subjected to it. He's an incredibly good defensive hero, and when he gets into his chain mix-up, it's pretty scary too. Zhengju is the next hero, and I'm also going to place him up with the S tiers, as he has unblockable light and heavies, undodgeable zone, which has the best hitbox in the game, palm strike for OS pressure, enhanced forward dodge light, amazing forward heavy chase, and a dodge attack that comes from different directions, a left or right. As far as clutch potential, you can dodge, recovery after every single move, and couple that with the static guard, he has a superior deflect that guarantees damage with unblockable light attack, making it so that his dodges protect him as he dodges into a move. Honestly, a very slippery hero because Zhengju will always be repositioning, so you can never really touch him. His feats worth mentioning are his Niku Kubi, Bounty Hunter, Quilin Ruse, which is the bomb that does tons of fire damage for a tier 2, and Scorching Deluge. Amazing for anti-ganking and stalling, as he can dodge around and utilize his unblockables for days. But as for team fighters, he's one of the best peelers in the game. I'd probably say he is the best peeler in the game. As for duels, I'd rank him in A tier, early high B tier, because he has all the tools needed to be unpredictable and dish out tons of damage, but he can get interrupted with his unblockables from time to time, so you gotta make a read and parry those. Musha is the next scary hero we need to talk about in the roster. He doesn't have any real chain unblockable heavies besides his zone, but he also frickin' has defensive capabilities, counteract everything. Unreactable deadly feints, infinite chain, roll catcher, unreactable ring the bell opener that can be cancelled, recovery into a full block so dodge attacks are nullified, amazing dodge attack, and frankly, blockade this and blockade that. Blockade after every attack, making him one of the most tankiest heroes to take down. His clutch potential revolves solely on his blockade, making it so that you can't really hit him after he does anything since he has infinite chains. Couple that with Juggernaut, Second Wind, Banner, or Fear itself, becomes a very annoying hero to fight. Definitely no doubt in my mind an S tier pick in Dominion, as always a solid hero for anti-ganking and stalling. As for duels, he's got unreactable deadly feints, a bash, as I said before, a great dodge attack, hard hero to punish, and really hard hitting too. Unreactable in pretty much all regards, S tier 100%. And moving on to Shigbonki, here comes the next in line with the S tiers, as he has unblockable heavies, a dodge bash with loads and loads of iframes, a forward dodge heavy for chase. He's a pretty straightforward hero, but what makes him really strong is his clutch potentials. His hug allows him to get health back, stun lock an opponent for about 2 to 3 seconds for easy damage. His GB also allows more opportunities for easy ganks since it stun locks your opponent like a bowling ball. And it's a really lengthy animation, another 2 or 3 seconds as well. The variable timed heavies also has hyper armor. All of his heavies have hyper armor, keep that in mind. He can also be target swap with incredibly large hitboxes, allow him to be a great team fighter. You gotta be careful though, because a lot of people try to trade with you at the same time. There's not really much to say about him, as he has very easy playstyle, and you can really get a lot of value out of him. Feats worth mentioning, of course, Staggering Blow, Juggernaut, and the bow. Overall, any Shigoki in the battlefield should pretty much make you think twice about letting heavy fly or light fly or just doing a dodge attack, because he's pretty much ready to always trade with you or dodge with his headbutt. I think he's okay for anti-ganking, but his main thing is pretty much stalling, because his headbutt has such amazing iframes. Target swapping and headbutting and going up to your follow-up heavy so you can't be punished is kind of insane. But for duels, I'll definitely put Shigoki up in S tiers. He's got so much utility with his Demon Ball and his hug. Also keep in mind, after every light attack, you can also get a hug, so you get your health back. and pretty much turn the fight around in so many scenarios. Demon Ball also is incredibly helpful near walls, so don't forget about that utility. And there's just really a lot of things to watch out when you're fighting against Shigbonki. And here we have everyone's favorite femboy, Kyoshin, another hero that gets value just by standing there menacingly. 100% S tier hero, as my femboy got unblockable heavies, undodgeable heavies, and lights, forward dodge bash, crushing counters, a freaking good dodge, solid chase tool, and incredible dodge attack, but his main strength revolves around ganking because his clutch potential is his Kaze stance. Not only will you be stun locked for 2 seconds for a follow-up heavy from his teammates, in a 2v1 situation you can't even hit him because he doesn't lose any stamina when he Kaze stance. Makes sense, right? So you're almost all the time eating that Kaze stance because people are just gonna guard break you, or you do anything and he's gonna let that fly, and you're in 2 second or 3 second stun lock. In many scenarios, Kyoshin can also crush and counter with his finisher heavy of Kaze stance to keep him safe from attacks, which are situational but have proven to be incredibly helpful in many of my games. His first feats that are also unlocked are the ones you should always be running, so no need to change them really unless you really want to mix it up. Stalling I'd say he's pretty good at, but anti-ganking not so much. The main point of this character and his role is specifically to gank and stall. He's not really good at anti-ganking because it's unblockable. It wastes so much time that you really always want to not try to go for the parry and not dodge, because it's better to just take the 3 slices and leave him vulnerable and waste his revenge. As for duels, Kyoshin is one of the best heroes to play, so I'd rank him A tier. He essentially feels like Black Pryor or the Asian Black Pryor with a little bit more utility when it comes to light and heavy combos. Black Pryor is another easy choice for the S tiers, as he also provides value just standing there, knowing he has a fuck you button to deal with every situation possible. Black Pryor's got that unblockable heavy, undodgeable heavy, crushing counters, neutral, and chain bash mix-up. I wouldn't say he's got a roll catcher, but it used on a hard read, you can catch someone who rolls away from you. It's also got crushing counter properties on it, but you really rarely ever see that move. You'll see it in like a blue moon. Now this clutch potential revolves solely on his ability to flip everything with his bulwark stance. This skyrockets him to the top because many people are just target swapping heavies, and heroes like Black Pryor can flip those incredibly easy. Unblockable, undodgeable, they're not aimed at you, no problem, no problem. He doesn't even care. Everything is fair game for him. He don't give a fuck. He's a honey badger. He's also incredibly tanky with good regenerative feats for his tier 1 and his tier 2, giving shields to people, umbral shelter, and the no fun button, of course. I don't even want to talk about that. Easily one of the best heroes for anti-ganking and stalling for days and days. If you don't have a hero that can kill Black Pryor fast enough on a point, you are wasting so much time. And I swear, I think 2 Black Pryors are worse than 2 pirates. Let me know down below what you guys think. As for duels, I'd still rate him a solid A tier hero, a really high one, as he only lacks the ability to be like a top tier simply because he doesn't have a dodge attack or a dodge bash. And I don't really know if we want to be giving that to every single hero, or do we, Ubisoft? They probably will. Pirate or Buyin is another one of those heroes that have a very easy to play playstyle and gets value because their kit has a ton of stun lock potential, access to easy unblockable heavies, undodgeable lights, heavies that track you for days, honestly a really fun mechanic in my opinion, unblockable roll catcher with hyper armor, amazing dodge attack, and all of her attacks are soft faintable. Oh, and of course hyper armor. Why not? The only thing she lacks is a neutral bash, but she has a chain bash that has an immense amount of tracking and can chain into her mix-up afterwards. Buyin's clutch potential includes having dodge recoveries after every attack, dodge attacks that also have a big of a hitbox as Kensei's zone, at least I feel like it, and she can also keep doing it while target swapping, making it very hard to punish her unless you decide to go with a hero with the full block or a hero with a ton of undodgeable light attacks or heavies. If she lands her chain heavy walk the plant skewer finisher, she can wall split if you're close enough to the wall, and if she doesn't, every one of her heavies guarantees the pistol blast, which causes hit stun, giving her teammates more time to land a heavy compared to like a normal heavy. She's a scary hero when you're in a gank situation. Even if you're ganking her, her ability to stay alive while dodging around is incredibly tedious. If you don't have a proper gank setup, it will be very hard to catch her. The feats you should be using are pretty much her first 4 that are equipped, since having ranged attacks are incredibly good in Forerunner and deals tons and tons of damage, and also bleed damage for her 3rd tier, and enables your teammates to be aggressive when you pop the 4th one. Amazing for stalling, and not too darn shabby for anti-ganking if I do say so myself. For duels, I'd say she's a solid A tier hero because her access to unblockables and recoveries give her a lot of tools in many situations. The lack of bash does make her a little bit weaker, but you don't really necessarily need a bash to be a top tier hero. You just need really good chain pressure, and her chain pressure is solid with her soft feints and with her seemingly infinite amount of stamina. Next in line on the chopping block is most likely Hitokiri. Now the only reason I put up so high in S tier because you can really turn your brain off and you can still get value with her. She's got unblockable heavy finishers, you can charge them, you can feint them, really scare people with the unblockable stuff. Variable timed heavies with infinite chain 50-50 with her kick mix-up, amazing dodge attack that goes into her mix-ups, with of course more hyper armor. She does have a forward dodge heavy, but its tracking could use some work and adjustments. However, it still can catch people who roll away from you. I would recommend any new player to play Hitokiri if they want to do well in their games, while also smoking a blunt or being drunk off their asses, honestly. Clutch potentials include hyper armor, of course, on her chain heavies, and her chain heavies almost feel like, well, I would say essentially already have undodgeable properties, so if you dodge, you're still going to get hit by them, whether it be chip or just right in the square in the face. She doesn't have neutral openers, but I mean, if you can parry every variable timed heavy by her, sure, then she doesn't have any openers. But if you're realistic and you're average player in matchmaking, and I haven't met anybody that could parry every single one of them all the time, so they are pretty good and practical when it comes to openers. She's honestly a decent anti-ganker and a pretty good staller too. As for duels, she's pretty scary when she gets going in her 50-50 kick mix-up. I'd rather be, fighting Black Pryor in many cases. And her noteworthy feats are, well, pretty much all of her first tier feats. Tier 1 Deliverance, Heal on Block, and Zen Bon Zakura. And that's her 1-hit KO backflip and Heal on Block. They're really, she just got good feats, honestly. Especially her first one where you can just execute someone until someone GBs you. That's crazy. It's crazy good. So for duels, I'll definitely put her in the A tiers, as she's got a lot of utility, and she's quite a scary hero when she gets in her 50-50 mix-up. And now we are done with the S tiers, moving on to the A+ tiers. These heroes are great, but require slightly more work to have more value. They've got good tools in their kit, but they aren't heroes that can do everything like the ones above them. Not saying that they're bad, but you might need to limit your beers to 5 for these guys. First off on the list is Gladiator. Man's got everything, almost everything might I say. Unblockable chain heavy skewer, fast chain lights, dodge bash, dodge light, a zone that's also a bash, and a toe stab for easy ganks. He specializes in ganks strictly and is incredibly easy to perform. All you gotta do is press one button. Clutch potential includes his deflect, which deals a ton of bleed damage and can be thrown to wall or ledge to land a follow-up heavy for an incredible amount of damage. Toe step, I'd consider it a clutch because it's one button and it's one of the easiest ganking tools available that leads to such high amounts of damage from your teammate and your chain mix-up potential. His dodge, bash, and lights also have iframes now and can be used to ignore entire mix-ups. The only thing that is notably bad about him is his reflex guard, but that goes for every single reflex guard hero. He's so good at ganking that it really doesn't matter since he offers so much to the table already. His notable feats are Haymaker for extra damage on bashes and throws, Trident, Fear itself, nothing to write home about for anti-ganking or stalling. He's more on the weaker side for that front, but he's a ganker, so he doesn't really need that. And as for duels, I'd say he's a top tier hero in the A+ department. Strong punishes, actually really strong punishes, and a nasty toe stealer. There's not that much bad things about Gladiator when it comes to 1v1 potential. As long as you're able to dodge a few bashes here and there and get to your skewer mix-up, he's quite a deadly hero. Even without a 500 or 600 MS bash, he still has his zone attack for, a good option select, or even as an opener from time to time. Next up is War Mommy, big poopy virus sword lady. She's got a 50-50 chain charged bash, unblockable dodge heavy for target swapping externals, enhanced lights, so if you don't parry those, enjoy the 50-50 mix-up, fantastic undodgeable forward dash heavy for rollers, and hyper armor on her finisher heavies. Clutch potential includes after every single parry, or most likely her heavy parries, she can impale to wall for some hefty bleed damage, which makes her a really scary hero to let any attacks fly. She kind of feels like a miniature version of Lawbringer. Feats are honestly what makes this hero though. All of her first tier feats have synergy and just destroy every single team fight. You shouldn't run anything besides this, but you can if you want to mix things up. She's decent in anti-ganking, but stalling, it's nothing to write home about. Really in both categories, nothing to write home about. She's more of like a team fighter. In duels, she's exactly like Warden, but with a more diverse moveset, so, a solid A+ tier for this character in duels. Berserker comes next, and my man's got unblockable heavies, unreactable light attacks, undodgeable dodge lights, a forward dodge heavy roll catcher. Also his forward dodge light is also a roll catcher too. And as for his clutch potential, man, he's got hyper armor for days, baby. Delayable dodge attacks and also light attacks, and a solid foundation of unblockable mix-ups. Really not much to say about Berserker, as he can duel incredibly well and be a solid team fighter, long as you can make decent trades and play a little bit elusive. Noteworthy feats, of course, there's just, the Axe, Fury, Fire Flash. Those combos are actually insane. In duels, I'd probably rate him a really strong A tier hero, as having unblockables and unreactable lights, and hyper armor makes your opponent respect your moves a lot more, so it stops them from interrupting you all the time, unless they have a bash, that is. Also, one of the best deflects in the game that gets you a GB. Boom, shakalaka. Berserker, for me, he feels like a hero that is powerful. Like, you still need to make good reads against your opponent. It never feels like I can't beat a Berserker because he's an overpowered hero or he's too good, but simply because he outplayed me that round. Because it's really all about pairing and making the right reads against him. Not much about, just dodging bashes and whatnot. Now, for the next tier that I'm going to talk about is the A tier, and these are heroes that I deem are strong, but they have some severely lacking kits compared to the A+ tier heroes. They don't offer as much and require you to outplay your opponents a little bit more, especially if you're up against meta picks and whatnot. Starting off with Warlord here, my man Warlord, the big brain. Man's got a fast headbutt, crushing counters, full block stance, forward heavy. That is pretty bad excuse for a roll catcher, but it does have hyper armor, so you could trade with it potentially. Undodgeable zone attack, and of course hyper armor on all of his heavy attacks. Warlord used to be top of the meta, but the nerf on his crashing charge has pretty much put him back into balance with the rest of the cast. However, he's still not as bad as the people say he is. He has the basic fundamentals of a balanced hero, and a good hero, keep that in mind. The clutch potential of this hero is still, of course, his wall throw punishes, as they toss incredibly far and can take half of your opponent's stamina away, while also having tons of ledge potential. He's still, he's still the same old Warlord, just that he's not running around and unlocking all the time like a little bitchly. And it's funny because we don't see Warlords out there anymore, because most of the bitchly Warlords that just crash and charge all the time quit playing him because it's, they can't be cheesy anymore. It's hilarious. Good riddance. The full block is also incredibly helpful in many situations, as you can negate damage and use mix-ups during it, such as light, heavy, headbutt, or zone. His anti-gank potential is decent, nothing amazing, but his stalling capabilities are where he really shines. He's got a lot of health, and with feats like Juggernaut, Fury, and Fire Flask, he's really no joke at all. Don't underestimate this hero because he has all the tools to dish out really good damage. As for duels, I'd rate him a strong A tier. Definitely needs a few tweaks to make him flow better, but overall, he's a hero that can really hold his own. He's kind of standard. A lot of people complain, boring and standard hero, but I'd like to argue that, I think people need to get used to using his full block more, coming out of it, going into his bash during his full block, and mixing people up with it. With that, he feels like a very fun hero to play, just like our Musha, in my opinion. And here we have our favorite Japanese lady, Nobushi. She is next up in line for the A tiers. Once you learn that she is one of the best peelers in the game and team fighters, this character is just incredibly elusive. She gets huge value just by existing with her zone attack. She's got undodgeable chain heavies, a chain kick that can wall splat as her clutch potential, and deals more damage if they are bleeding. Her zone attack also is just, it's probably one of the best tools for team fights, and so is her dodge heavy, which has tons of cleave. Another clutch is that she deals way more damage when someone is bleeding, and her hidden stance is really amazing for repositioning and avoiding damage. Allow her to kick light, undodgeable heavy, or dodge out of it to get out of any scenario. Horrible, but just horrible in anti-ganking, though, I will say, but she's quite decent in stalling because she can really position herself in a favorable way so she avoids taking damage from the enemy. But like I said, horrible in anti-ganking, absolutely terrible. Never go in hoping to anti-gank. You will perhaps get some good moments, but overall against good players or people that, just dodge roll everything, well, you're pretty much screwed. She's absolute dog shit. And she's also pretty poo-poo in duels as well. Absolutely terrible. Nothing to write home about for duels, except the only time is if you underestimate her, because if you get bleeding and you happen to be next to a wall and you take a kick or an undodgeable to the face, it's gonna deal a lot of damage to you. So for her duel potential, she's probably one of the worst heroes in the entire game. Most likely putting Nobushi down all the way in the dumps in D tier for dog tier. Now next up we have Conker, and I know that he's getting a rework, but we don't know when that's specifically coming out, but I'm assuming that they're gonna try to keep him exactly the same with maybe a few adjustments. So I'm gonna talk about his buff and his pre-rework, his live version right now. So with his live version, I think it's important to note that he still is a really good tank and a really good staller. He's got a dodge bash with superior block, a superior block zone, and a charged unblockable heavy. Clutch potential includes his full block, which is really powerful in team fights. Doesn't sound like much, but that's because he's really only a defensive powerhouse. When he's on point, taking him out will be a problem because of his dodge bash in his zone. He's a superb staller, but absolutely atrocious when you're trying to anti-gank with him, because people just roll away and you pretty much have to stand there and just shield bash people or just do nothing. Feats that are worth mentioning are Shield Basher, which basically nets you almost heavy damage on every single bash attack, heal on block, and that's pretty much about it. He doesn't really have much going for him for feats, nor any sort of chase or you know, tool to deal a ton of damage. That's pretty much the only good things about Conk, as he's more, you know, of annoyance on the battlefield, which is why he's getting a huge rework in the first place. In duels, I'd rank him a low A tier pick. You will need to play pretty good defensively since we're in an offensive meta and lights are pretty useful these days. His damage is still quite low even after a dodged bash, so his clutch potential doesn't really help in any way. Walls and parries will probably your best friend, but as for his rework is gonna skyrocket him to like S tier because he simply has that full block cancel after every single attack. He's going to become exactly like Musha, Kyoshin, and a Black Pryor. So I don't know why Ubisoft keeps doing that. He's gonna be really strong defensively, and he also is going to be pretty solid for offense as well, since he has that faster chain bash, acts like a pseudo 50-50 mix-up, just like Black Pryor and Kyoshin, where it's a light into a bash or light into undodgeable infinite heavies, keep that in mind. And he also has faster charged unblockable heavies. After that, you know, he's going to be a really tough hero to beat in Dominion and duels. So in duels, I'd probably rank him, I'd probably put him S tier for easy to use, and then but with the live version, as I said before, A tier and all that good stuff. Now Tandy comes into mind when it comes to strong A tier heroes. Tandy has a neutral bash, fast lights, undodgeable lights, and a dragon dodge to avoid certain mix-ups or stall with his iframes. Really, when you think about it, he's a very simple hero compared to all the new reworks. All he really has is 2-hit chain combos and some dance moves. He does have some clutch potential with his kick to ledge and set up ganks, but it's really slow and most people just target swap external and dodge it anyways. And a lot of people have static guards, so his forward dodge is pretty useless, and in 1v1 situations, if you keep your guard top, you can pretty much avoid his side light undodgeables as well. It's very situational and needs a rework on that aspect. His anti-gank, it's not so bad, but his strength revolves around stalling with his dodges and his stalling with his feats too. With his tier 3 and tier 4 giving him HP back, regenerating shields, he can be quite a hassle and annoyance if you don't finish him off quickly. Tandy also doesn't do that much damage, as his chain pressure is kind of non-existent. It's very weak compared to other heroes. Other heroes have been getting bashed into light, into unblockable and undodgeable. Tandy really only has pretty much just a bash and heavy feint. He doesn't really do that much damage, and his chain pressure is very weak. With no unblockable heavies, there's no reason to be scared of him in team fights besides him spamming his zone attack, which has pretty good cleave. In duels, he's a solid A tier since you won't be able to external his fast lights, but it's still very low damage, and he has to work for his damage. Palm Strike is really the only thing he has, and with an offensive meta that relies on chain pressure and really strong wide arcing unblockables, he really suffers in that regard, and his flow just becomes, you know, absolutely trash compared to the rest of the cast. Now my boy Orochi is still an amazing pick in Dominion in my opinion, a solid AT hero that can teamfight still pretty good. Orochi has top heavy unblockables with incredible range, side heavies that also seem undodgeable, and undodgeable side light attacks. Forward dodge light for roll catchers, undodgeable storm rush to gank and roll catch a kick, and of course the clutch potential guaranteed deflex, which seem to land a lot more so even though you're just spamming the dodge attack externally. All of this combined, even with his nerf, he's still an amazing hero in Dominion. Man's got iframes for days, dodge recoveries after every single attack, and can seem untouchable if you're not picking the right hero. Good feats include Kai, which is still tier 1 by the way, and you lose all your stamina, so GG's Ubisoft. Kudai, Bow, Slip Through, and Fear itself. In duels, I'd say he's a little bit weaker, but that shouldn't really discourage you from using him since Orochi still has unblockables, a viable kick, deflex, and ways to bait you out into attacking him with Storm Rush, which is why I'd probably rank him an A tier hero still. A great team fighter, and shouldn't be disregarded because he lost his undodgeable top light. Up next we got Shaman, and Girl's got an unblockable chain heavy finisher, although a little bit slow, unreactable soft feint bleed lights, a bash that wall splats, and also can ledge people like so many times just by throwing them, fast delayable dodge attack, soft feint GBs on her heavies, amazing dodge heavy, roll catcher, and her clutch potential is of course her bite. Amazing for ganks if your teammates don't interrupt you, which can happen more often than you'd like, but it's still pretty darn good. Has great value if they are bleeding, which will force reactions out of the enemy. Honestly, really scary when you're bleeding. Fast bleed deflex too, you can cancel out of that, and also do like double deflex on certain heroes. A scary hero for sure, but if you can't handle reflex guard, then you better be careful with her. She can also heal some HP when landing hits while the enemy is bleeding, so that can really help her gain the edge and get some HP back. She's got a variety of feats you can run with her as Bear Trap, Bleeding Axe, Nail Bomb, and Fire Flask. Really has it all when it comes to build variety. Shaman is just a really fun hero for a lot of people, it seems. In duels, she's definitely an A+ tier hero for unreactable offense and clutch potential. Gotta say that she's honestly one of the scariest heroes to fight in 1v1s if they kind of know what they're doing, and even then, so unreactable offense is always a scary thing. And that concludes it for the A+ and A tiers, and now we're on to the B tiers. Now these heroes do have a kit, however, it just gets outshined in almost every single way compared to the top A tiers and require a little bit more brain power. And here we are up to my main girl, or main man, Kensei. Honestly, he's still a really strong pick for team fights, but with everybody getting undodgeables and unblockables, dodge recoveries, and hyper armor for team fights, he's getting a little bit power crept a little, and he still holds his own if played well. However, it's still an uphill battle. Unblockable top heavies, Nature's Wrath for roll catching, amazing wide zone attack, hyper armor as chain heavy finishers and chain finisher lights, pommel strike for OS pressure, and an amazing dodge attack. As for his clutch potential, I'd probably just say his wall punishes that can land top heavy unblockables when wall splatted. That's probably one of his best traits. And then his superior block dodges, which can negate damage, while his top one can also land him a free GV, so that's pretty shagadelic. His dodge attacks also help him reposition and make him unpunishable by a follow-up light or heavy after it, since it has hyper armor, so you don't really want to be trading with him all the time unless you can guarantee some serious damage. Other than that, his kit is very basic. It revolves around you supporting your teammates and peeling for them. His feats aren't anything to write home about either, since they are very, very basic. His dual potential, however, suffers a little bit more than Kensei. In Dominion, he's just really slow, and that can be taken advantage of, so you can only really rely on standard lights or reactionary playstyle. I'd put him down in C tier as he needs a little bit of a tune-up like the rest of the lower tiers. Now as for Griffin, I would still place him in high B tier as his kit revolves around his kick mix-up or his undodgeable lights, which can be dodged very easily when you target swap him. Man's got undodgeable finisher lights, chain kick, a good dodge attack, bash, forward dodge heavy for roll catches, and then a really nice chain heavy finisher with hyper armor, although it's quite slow. He doesn't really have anything else that stands out besides his heavy finishers that has amazing range, but most people have dodge attacks now, so it's a little bit risky to use, although I will say sometimes it does track people. His only clutch potential is his high wall throw punishes that you can get fairly easily. Not much to say about Griffin, he's got a decent kit, but it's risky for him to commit in team fights since he doesn't really have dodge recoveries or unblockable heavies. I will say his feats are pretty nice with his tier 2 healing AoE feat, healing crossbow, and healing aura, and don't forget about his bomb that acts like a stalwart banner. A hero that can hold his own, but in no way replaces any of the top tiers. In duels, I'd say he's a little bit weaker, but he still holds a solid foundation when it comes to, being able to mix your opponent up with his kick. So staying in B tier is probably the best placement for him. Centurion, oh boy, he's in a tricky spot because 1, he has unblockable chain finishers, variable timed heavies, chain 50-50 punch that can unbalance for great gank setups, a forward kick, and a good roll catcher with hyper armor. All sounds good on paper, but what he really lacks is a dodge attack or a defensive tool to deal with all the heroes that have dodge attacks or bashes to negate his mix-up. Still an amazing ganker if you set him up correctly, but he can be hard to play in team fights as he is very vulnerable and needs to be babysat sometimes. Feats, however, make up for his clutch potential with Haymaker that deals tons of damage, and his wall splats with parries will net him loads of damage. Pugio is also a incredibly overpowered, and Phalanx can help you out with some shields. A solid hero if you don't mind a bunch of heroes external dodge attacking you and you staring at them knowing that you can't really do anything. Honestly, not much to say about Centurion, as he's mainly just a ganker and setting up huge amounts of damage for your teammates to land. In duels, I'd still say he can be a menace and revolves around you baiting them out, since your punch can't be feinted at the last second like other charged bashes in this game. And now onto Lawbringer, also a interesting hero. Man's got zero neutral pressure but solid chain offense. Unblockable chain heavy finishers, enhanced lights for that wee little bit of chip damage, slow dodge bash, but you can still pretty much punish every bash, and that's pretty much it for him. He does however have a decent clutch potential, actually quite a few. After a parry, he's got many options: unblockable zone to hit around him, impale for heavy stun into pretty much a 90% guaranteed light into a fast unblockable side heavy, or after a heavy parry, can stun and follow up with another light to get into his unblockable heavy. So you see, he's got to get the parries, but the thing is you got to be awake for that, which is why he's a B tier hero. He's super tanky, high HP pool, feels like a juggernaut with righteous deflection and bombs for days. Nothing to write home about for anti-ganking, but his stalling capabilities are pretty solid. Really, Lawbringer is a punching bag, but sometimes the bag hits you back, and when it hits you, it hits pretty hard. So you can't underestimate his clutch potentials, and you can't just let attacks fly willy-nilly. In duels, he's in the same situation where parrying is key, so if you don't do that, you'll lose. But if you do, you can turn the fight instantly, so that's why I'm rating him B tier. Up next, we have Valkyrie, a fan favorite. She does have a bash mix-up, crushing counters, and I can't stress how good these are in team fights. Dodge attacks, full blocks, amazing forward dodge light to catch rollers, and her sweep can be pretty helpful in team fights. Not too shabby of a hero if I do say so myself, just lacks something to push her up into the meta. But the reason I place her in B tier is because she can't really do anything special compared to the rest of the heroes above her, and she kinda has to work for her damage. She's a very meh hero when it comes to damage in team fights. Her clutch deflex can help you, but if you miss it, your dodges actually lose static guard and you become like an assassin. The pin does a ton of damage, sure, but not really enough to compensate. Feats do however compensate, which is why she's a good hero in that regard. Very underrated because she's got Bloodlust, Javelin, Fury, and Fire Flask. In duels, I'd rate her a solid B tier, maybe lower, as her damage is low, but her chain pressure can be helpful for opening people up. Nusha is a weird hero because her traps don't work half the time. Traps are okay for openers, fast ass 3 chain light attacks, dodge attacks, good roll catcher with their forward dodge light, and that pretty much covers it. Traps are sort of inconsistent as raw heavies will hit you in the face, so you can't really use them as valid openers. Dodge attacks negated, light attacks negated, emotes negated, just get going out of lock negated. She's a very reactionary type of hero and requires you to specialize in, ganking in 4v4. She's mediocre, but she can be scary in a 2v1 situation. However, she is still a very niche hero. I don't even want to talk about the deflex because you have to change it. They should just be guaranteed. You don't need to change guards and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be a read within a read. That's just silly. Feats like Caltrap, Deadly Duet, and Warmonger's Poop feat are all good, but as I said before, other heroes just play so much better than her and there's no real reason to use her unless you really enjoy her fashion, which I do. She's really cool. In duels, she's a little bit better, underrated for sure, but she still suffers the same issues like I said before and forces you to be reactionary. A C tier hero in my opinion, and I just think traps need a rework of some sort and just make them actually work. And we are getting close to the end here. Let's move it on to Highlander. He's a very unique hero because man's got crushing counters, hyper armor on chain lights, and all of his heavies. 400 offensive stance lights, 50-50 caper toss, which can be rolled, so it becomes kind of obsolete in 4v4 since everyone does that in the first place. Celtic Curse, which can help with iframes and opening people up. Unblockables from offensive stance, and as you can see, he's got many tools here, except the main problem within his mix-up is kick to caper, which is nullified just by dodge rolling. He gets put down in the lower tiers simply because of that in 4v4, because many people do that, so you really don't ever really use that move unless they're out of stamina. With undodgeables and dodge attacks, it's so prevalent. His playstyle revolves around playing defensively and baiting people out, and when you ain't awake, you are going to suffer, so you gotta really be paying attention. I will say he makes for a decent ganker with his kick to caper because once the opponent rolls, they lose half their stamina and your teammate can essentially initiate and capitalize on that. Kick to caper also does a ton of stamina damage, so it's very helpful in out of stamina situations. Feats are also negligible besides the Spear Storm, which is OP as fudge, so I'd say he takes some skill to use, but he can still be very helpful, so C tier would be his placement. Like I said before, his access to offensive stance and his 400 MS lights and unblockables is incredibly useful in ganking situations. However, in an anti-ganking situation or stalling, he doesn't really shine in that aspect. As for duels, I would put him in B tier because nobody ain't reacting to those fast offensive lights. Their 400 MS, man's literally got light spam in his kit and can force a reaction out of you as soon as he steps into offensive stance, so you really want to be trying to light him out of it or making good reads. Most players, except the small PP energy players, don't dodge roll from Highlander in matchmaking duels, so your kick to caber is actually a viable move. However, it's best used when they are out of stamina or low stamina, since many heroes have dodge attacks now. Doesn't stop the fact that he can bait you out with offensive stance still. Quite an underrated hero when played well and needs small tweaks to his kit, not an entire rework. He's definitely not a bad hero, as some people do say, but he's really not the best hero either. He's really got all the tools to deal with any situation and has some serious clutch potential. And next we have Posterboard Warden. Doesn't really have that much when it comes to team fights. He's probably going to be in the C tier category. He's got unblockable chain heavies, a good roll catcher, wide zone, but uses so much stamina, 50-50 chain bash, and that's really it. I don't mention his top crushing counter because it's practically useless. You see that in a Blue Moon, and most crushing counters, they're more helpful in external or team swapping, target swapping situations. He doesn't offer much in team fights unless it's for 2v1 ganking, but even then it's nothing special compared to easier ganks out there. Lights are bad, especially chain lights, which are incredibly slow, and his feats are also terrible. Remember, I'm not saying you can't do well with him in Dominion, but you better outread all the undodgeables and the dodge attacks and the unblockables in the game, because he doesn't have a dodge attack, he only has a dodge bash, and it's quite slow. For duels, he's amazing and still one of the best heroes in the game, A+ tier for sure, and since you can't target swap him, you have to deal with his 50-50 mix-up. And don't forget about his unblockable mix-up, which is really a good tool to deal with people who dodge, or just to open up people with OS pressure. Jormungandr, a fun hero since he has a lot of clutch potential, but has more negatives than positives unfortunately. Slow neutral bash that guarantees no damage but takes away stamina, only stamina, has an unblockable chain heavy finisher, undodgeable light, hyper armor neutral heavies, and a forward heavy roll catcher. Clutch potentials include chain heavy finishers, can wall splat for a guarantee heavy. If your opponent is out of stamina, it can unbalance for some serious nutsack attack for 38 damage. His OOS punishes and slam are the only redeeming qualities about him, as they synergize well with his feats. Tier 1 heals on bash, tier 2 she gives shields on slam, 3rd tier hits enemies with hammers while taking away their stamina, and his tier 4 is Twilight of the Gods, absolutely top tier because it knocks everybody down. His feats alone help him carry games, but I really can't recommend him if you're up against good players or trying to carry your entire team. Better heroes out there, but when you're in the zone, he can really be an amazing hero. For duels, I'd rate him severely bottom tier, as you have no feats to help you in the end, and it all revolves around parrying and dodging bashes, so no thank you. And here we have Peacekeeper, fast chain lights, fast soft feint top bleed, and a soft feint GB. For her clutch potential, if they're bleeding, she gets enhanced lights and unblockable chain heavy finishers, which can get really scary, because lo and behold, her guard break and bleed stabs deal a ridiculous amount of damage. Probably it is the highest damage you can get for a GB out of the entire roster. That's really her only redeeming quality, but even then, many people can just external her and dodge away in 4v4. There's no easy way to get someone bleeding besides in 1v1, which they do happen in 4v4, but her soft feint dodges are negligible also, since they really only do it on heavy startups. No real big reason to use them. It would be much more helpful if she could just do it after a finisher heavy. Deflects are nice, but have fun taking hyper armor right to the face. A poor hero in 4v4, but in 1s it's quite a different story. Honestly, one of the best duelists in the game. A high A+ tier hero in my opinion. Her entire kit revolves around duels, and with her bleed and soft feints, she's one of the more scary heroes when bled, even more so than Shaman in my opinion. And finally, the last tier is Shaman. What can I say? Man's got no openers, no real way to deal some serious damage. He's got a kick within his chi stance, undodgeable heavy, unblockable heavy crushing counters, but only in chi stance, which he cannot realistically initiate with. Doesn't have any redeeming qualities outside of his chi stance, besides a decent dodge attack that has pretty good hitbox, a roll catcher, but other than that, his sweep is non-existent and man needs some help. In duels, it's the same way, and you'll see tons of Shaman backstep away all the time after every mix-up just to get into the light, and it's a highly bitchly playstyle. It reminds me of old Shinobi where he just smoke dodge away. Still, I think he needs a big rework, and he's definitely a dog tier hero. Alright, and that about covers the duel/Dominion tier list. What are your thoughts on my placements? Did you agree with my assessments, or had some changes you personally disagree with? Let me know. Or perhaps I had missed something important that you'd like others to, find out for themselves down in the comments. Let me know in the comments, as I like to read them. Really interesting to see people's takes on it, even after the new meta has shifted. The new reworks and heroes definitely changed the meta quite a bit, and we can see some serious power creep happening. A lot of people are getting more tools, more undodgeables, more chain bashes, more unpunishable things. Always a fun time, I tell you what. Appreciate you taking your time to watch this video, thank you so much. If you didn't know, I've been streaming Elden Ring so much on Twitch and will be making videos on that very soon, so slap like now and subscribe for more content. Bye bye. See you later.